Hello, welcome to today's live. I know it's been about 9 days since I've been alive, but I just came back from my 60th birthday vacation. We went on a cruise to Norway, and boy, is it cold in northern Norway. But it was really good, and I'm ready to rock and roll again. So, what's the subject for today? Well, we're going to be talking about E-2s. Okay, that's the treaty investor uh, visa. And I wanted to make clear what types of businesses that somebody can invest in order to get the E-2, because I get all kinds of questions on that. And so I thought, making a nice video on that might clear things up. And then what will happen is after, I'll go back, I'll look at any questions you might have had, and I will answer whatever immigration questions you have, and then we'll go from there. So, E-2. I've done lots of videos on the E-2. Obviously you have to be from a country that has a treaty with the U.S. and so forth. But then ultimately it comes down to what type of business. Now, first things first, you can't invest in a business that doesn't make economic sense just to get the E-2 visa, because if you're going to just lose money all the time, or it's not going to happen, not going to be successful, then what's the use? You're not going to be able to stay in business anyways. So first things first, you want to take immigration and the issue of immigration out of the equation, and you want to see if the business is something you would do regardless of immigration, and is something that might be successful. Okay? Then what you have to do is you have to be able to invest in a business itself. So first things first, whenever I do an E-2 and I say, well, what are you going to invest in? Okay, because I always say, well, how much money do you have to invest and so forth? And they'll say 100,000 or 200,000. I'll say, well, what are you going to use to invest in? Some might say, well, I'm going to become a consultant, or I'm going to do help people do real estate investments, or I'm going to be a personal trainer, things like that. And I had to say, well, where's that money going to go? How are you going to prove in those type of businesses that you've invested? I'll just use, $100,000. And they'll say something to the effect, well, I'm going to transfer it into an account. Go, well, that's not an investment. I mean, just think about it. If you take $100,000 of your money, and wherever you happen to be, let's say you're in Ireland, and you transfer it to a U.S. bank account, even if it's a corporate U.S. bank account that you started a company, is that an investment? Just transferring money from your bank account in your home country to a different bank account in the U.S., are you able to turn around the next day and say, well, I don't think I want to do that, and get all your money back? Well, the answer is yes. And so if the answer is yes to that question, whether you can get all of your money back, then it's not an investment. An investment, there has to be risk. Okay? Meaning if the company goes down, so does a lot of your money. If there's no risk, there's no investment. Period. Okay? So when you decide what type of business you want to do the E-2, there has to be a coherent plan for actually investing the money. So for example, when I said sometimes people will want to help people invest in real estate. Well, just helping people invest in real estate, you're not going to be able to invest anything. But if you were to, for example, invest yourself in real estate, maybe, buy junky houses and then rehab them and then resell them, then move on to the next one, that's a great investment. It's easy to show, okay? I mean, you put your money into buying the house or the apartment or whatever, okay? If I were to look at the engineering side of it, okay, or the consultant side of it, where people will say a lot of times they're going to be a consultant because they have years of experience in engineering or, you know, business marketing or whatever it is. You still have to be able to invest. So theoretically, you could buy your own place to run the business out of, okay, and then you could go from there. You could also combine it with something else. Let's say you are an engineer and you want to act as a consultant, for companies that could use your services. And let's say you come from, whatever country, Greece. You could invest, for example, in a little shop that sells Greek curios, okay, or a little Greek restaurant. And you could also do the consulting as well. There's nothing saying that the E-2 has to be a single business, okay? You could literally, if you do it right, and if you do it at the beginning, you could literally have two different kinds of completely unrelated businesses and come in on the E-2. So if you were to do the consulting, which you're not going to be able to show you made any real investment, but you also are going to do a Greek restaurant or whatever it happens to be, a small little mom and pop place, you definitely can show the investment in the restaurant. And because you've stated that part of the business is also being a consultant, you wouldn't have to specifically show you made an investment in the consultant side of it. Do you see how that works? So you end up getting what you want. Although, while you might not have wanted to open up a little restaurant or so forth, you do have the immigration side of it that you have to be concerned with. Now, if you don't want to do that, it is possible to prepay rent at an office for a long time to show the investment. So, if rent is $1,000 a month and you're going to prepay it, you're going to have to prepay a whole lot of rent in order to make the minimum realistic investment for an E-2. Okay? That's how that works. So you can also get into a franchise. Okay, now things like, I was going to say Subway, but Subway you have to be a U.S. citizen. But if you see an advertisement somewhere for a franchise, you can do that assuming you qualify, and that'll be fine for the E-2. If you are going to take out a loan for a mortgage, you can do that as well, because the mortgage has teeth on it. If you don't pay it back, there's all kinds of bad stuff that's going to happen for them to get it and to try to enforce the issue. Okay? So other types of businesses that I've seen, dental practice, that have done E-2s that have, been decently approved, dental practices, of course, what I had already talked about, restaurants, gas stations, all kinds. The E-2 is wide open, which is the reason that it is so very much sought after. But you can't mistake, something you want to do that doesn't have a real investment with something that requires an investment in order to get the E-2. So short and to the point, but that's what I wanted to get through, okay? And then, as I've talked about with prior ones, then you need to, usually invest around 100,000 US. It can be less. I've done them for less. But the less you get below that, the harder it is to get approved, okay? So do make sure it's a real business that requires investment, okay? All righty. So let's see what we have if we have any questions, okay? And again, I have a lot of people here where it says click to invite. You have to write back to me. Do you want me to invite you so I can give you a consultation during this live, which you understand everybody else will be listening and watching? If you want that, let me know. Okay. Let me scroll through here and get the questions, if we have any. I know it's Monday. Okay. Let's see. Well, E-Flood got the #1 gifter badge. Okay, just a minute. We have a lot of people that joined, but not so many questions. With the war, is it better to take our money out from the bank? Okay. I mean, there's no war yet. Obviously, you're referring to the fact that the president attacked Iran without congressional approval, and that they're now considering closing the Strait of Hormuz, and that all kinds of bad stuff's going to happen. So I can't tell you whether you should or shouldn't. Assuming you're in the U.S., assuming you have money in the bank, it's federally guaranteed for up to $250,000. Okay, given that you might want to have a little safe in your house, and you might want to have some in there as a backup just in case, no matter what. Okay, just like if an earthquake comes and you're in California, you have to have an earthquake preparedness kit. Okay, it doesn't mean there's going to be an earthquake tomorrow, but it's nice to have it just in case. Okay, doesn't mean you have to take everything out, but maybe some. That's my opinion. I need, okay, this is from Alexandra, sorry. I need a sponsor. I have all the requirements. I need to sustain myself. Okay, I think what you're stating, Alexandra, is you're being petitioned for lawful permanent residency, and the sponsor doesn't make enough to show that you won't become a public charge. Well, in that case, it is possible for you to show or to waive that requirement if you can't find a joint sponsor. I mean, if you can find a joint sponsor that makes enough, that solves all the issues there. But if you can't, there's ways of showing the assets that one owns, the liquidity of the assets, the probability of showing they won't become a public charge, the job offers, and so forth. Okay, it's considerably more complicated than just submitting the necessary tax returns. But if you don't have it, you don't. So you can show it that way. Okay, and I'm not saying that's easy. Alrighty, let's see. Shazia got the #1 gift badge. Okay. Well, if you're saying this is again a follow up, Alexander, if you're saying most people don't show a gross income of 27,000, then you're going to have to show alternative forms. I mean, the bottom line is you are inadmissible if you're going to be determined to be a public charge, and you will be determined to be a public charge if the petitioner can't show 125% making of the gross income or of the poverty line. Okay. All right, let's see what we have. What do you think about getting married 90 days upon arrival? Well, I don't think it's a good idea. This is from Emmanuel. I'm assuming that you entered on a B2 or you're going to enter on a B2. And the law says that if you get married within 90 days of entry, you are presumed to have committed fraud. Because the reality is they're saying you didn't really come here to visit Disneyland and then say goodbye. You came here pretending you were going to visit Disneyland with the real intention to marry. Now, it doesn't mean you can't file various paperwork and arguments to get over that rebuttable presumption, but it will be difficult. Okay? I mean, how long did you know the person? When was the last time you spoke to him? When did you decide to get married? Why wouldn't you get married before coming? When did you decide after? Now, it doesn't matter, if you get married 91 days after, the rebuttable presumption of fraud disappears, but the issue itself does not disappear. They're still going to ask, I mean, I'll exaggerate. Obviously, if they ask and you say, well, I planned all the time to get married, but I waited 91 days because I know there's the 90-day rule. Well, boom, it'll be denied for fraud right then and there. Okay? So if you're going to get married, you have to do it the legitimate way. And even though it takes longer, in the end, assuming it's approved, that's what you want. Okay? Whoop. I was just scrolling and it went up like 50 people. Just a minute. Be patient. Thank you. Okay. Where did it go? All right. Walt, you said you tried calling. Oh, thanks for the thanks for the roses. Walt just says tried calling, but it goes to email. You have to call my office. Okay. You have to call my office, 562-495-0554, and they will set you up with an appointment. Okay. I can't just pick up the phone anytime people call, or I would never get any work done. Okay. That's how it works. You can also email me your questions. Works like that as well. Okay. Okay, let me scroll here a little more. See if we have any questions. Can you hear every time I press the screen to scroll? Okay, here we go. This is from T.I. Moya, if I pronounced that right. Married to an active duty military member and an immigration court and want PIP. Okay, well, there's some issues there. Okay, first of all, if you got married while being in immigration court, there is a presumption, again, that you did it to avoid deportation. And so you have to get over the bona fide marriage exemption first, PIP or not. Okay? You have to prove to the degree of sufficiency that the judge believes you that you intended to marry before you got into deportation proceedings, or that you married regardless of the deportation because that's what you wanted to do anyways, and you didn't do it just to avoid deportation. Now, sometimes I say this to people and they go, well, I didn't get married to avoid deportation. I got married because I loved the person. Well, everybody and their mother's going to say that, okay? It's a matter of proving through all kinds of ways. Declarations, affidavits, showing how long you knew each other, what you did, when you were planning on getting married, things like that. You can't just say it and think that's going to work, okay? So that's the first issue. The second issue is you're in immigration court, and if you want PIP, that means you didn't enter legally. So I need to know if there's any issues there. Okay, it doesn't cure all issues, even if parole in place is granted. Did you enter with a fraudulent green card? Did you claim to be a U.S. citizen? I need to know exactly how you entered. The parole in place is nice if it's granted, but if you don't qualify to adjust in the first place, it's not going to help you. Okay? So it's possible for you to get it, but there's things that need to be done, and there's procedures that need to be followed. Okay? So it's doable, but you got to do it right. Okay. Let's see. Okay, and this is a follow-up on that. You say you've applied for asylum. Well, if you've applied for asylum, then you need to also follow through with that. You can't just withdraw the asylum because you married somebody who might qualify. You might get the green card through. I don't ever withdraw a form of relief until I'm sure the other one's been granted. And there's no way you can be sure the other one's going to be granted at the present time. So you need to continue with your asylum, and then you can also apply for the parole in place and the adjustment if you qualify. Okay? All right, does all that make sense? All righty then. Well, I appreciate the roses, badges, all the other stuff. That should do it for the live today. And until next time, everybody have a good day, okay?